Hello, and welcome back to No Way! Tell Me Everything. I am your host, Jess, and today I am joined by the lovely Morgan from Oops, I'm Evolving. And I had the very lovely privilege of being on her podcast a few weeks ago, I think it was. And we had such a good time that I wanted to invite you onto my podcast so we could talk about stuff. And we're kind of just going to shoot the shit today because there's so much going on in the universe and we had such a great time talking. I am absolutely sure that we will end up where we're meant to be. So without further ado, welcome. And would you please be so kind as to introduce yourselves to my listeners?
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I am the podcast host of Oops, I'm Evolving. I also have Unfiltered Growth Co. So that's where you can find me on Instagram and Morgan Unfiltered on TikTok. And yeah, I'm an intuitive coach and I just love to help people through the awakening process because holy shit, can that be rough? So I really just like to take things that can sometimes be difficult to understand. Sometimes they can feel a little out there, especially for those of us that are very beginning. And I like to just bring it down to earth because my experience was scary. My experience was alone. My experience was just intense. And it's always going to be intense, but I don't think that it needs to be as scary. I don't think that you need to flounder as much as I did. So when you can have somebody kind of help support you through that, it can be a game changer. So that's what I'm here for.
So by the time that this episode comes out, I will have released the week before an episode exactly on spiritual awakening. And I talk about the 7 things that are very common. Some of them are ones I didn't know about, and some are ones that are pretty standard, like ear ringing and stuff like that. Because I had the same experience. I didn't know anybody who had gone through a spiritual awakening. I was very much not in the spiritual space at all. There were so many things that happened that were just like, what in the heck is going on? And speaking of what in the heck is going on, what in the heck is going on? So we're talking today on the 20th of August. Again, this will be like 2 weeks from now. So I pray to all that's holy that this has stopped or at least chilled out a little bit. I have a favorite astrologer on Instagram called Asya Rose. I don't know if you know her, but she talks about a lot of the energies and stuff going around in a very practical way. Like she leans more into like what this means for you in your everyday life, which is why I really like listening to her. And she has been very realistic that she has basically said that we can kind of expect crazy energy until like the end of this year.
Yeah, when I was at the beginning of this year and I was really leaning into astrology, and that's really what I was learning too, was that this year is essentially an unprecedented year where it's like all of the outer planets were changing, which hasn't happened since like the 1800s. We have we just came out of this retrograde season that was wild. And yeah, that's kind of what I landed on too, is that the year of 2025 is just kind of nuts.
Yeah. And on top of that, I feel like I believe in a lot of different ways of explaining the things that happen in our universe. So there's like obviously astrology, human design is based somewhat on astrology and other things. Then there's numerology. There's all these different explanations for how we explain what's going on. And this year, what I think is interesting is all the things that you mentioned astrologically, but also numerologically. We're in a 9-year, which is end beginnings. And I actually found out yesterday in my quest to understand specifically in my case what's going on, because I know that all of my major placements are in all of the signs right now that are getting, screwed without lube. But I was like, let's see what else is going on, because this feels even more. There is something tell me there's even more going on in me. And I found out that not only are we all collectively in a 9-year, I specifically am also in a 9-year. So this year for me personally is also very much crazy. And we were talking about, Morgan and I were supposed to talk 2 days ago, but I have not been sleeping, as many other people have not. It's everybody. We're all being victimized. The weird thing is I keep waking up at times that have multiple 4s in them, and I've been seeing 4-4 and 4-4-4 a lot. So there's something going on there. And the past few nights, so we were supposed to talk Monday, and then we didn't. because I was scattered. Bad news, brain is still in that area, as you can hear probably. But the past 2 nights, I've been waking up at 4:41, 4:42 in the morning. Today I woke up at 4:42, couldn't go back to sleep, fully awake. And then I also had that song, which I don't know that well, by Noah Kahan. I don't really know him all
Noah
that well. I don't know
Khan.
if you know him. Yeah, Khan. Thank you, Noah Khan. He has that song called Stick Season, and
I
I
just
woke up
listened
with
to that this morning.
Really? Girl, I woke up with that in my head, and I don't know that song. I literally only know that it's Stick Season part of it, right? I just woke up with that looping. So I was like, cool, I got to look that up. And I looked up what is stick season, and it says that it's a time of emotional vulnerability and transition. So I think that was my guides being like, you're going through it, babes.
I think, first of all, sames. I have been sleeping, but my dreams have been wild. Also have been waking up in the fours. 4:14, I think, was the last time that I saw when I woke up. But truthfully, what it feels like to me is it feels like so far this year, we have been going through like a huge collective, like shedding almost, where we've just been shedding all of this stuff, all of these old ways of thinking, all of these old ways of acting, all of these old ways of behaving. And it's like now we're being asked to embody that energy and we're truly going through this like transformation. So this embodiment feels really uncomfortable because I mean, we're not who we were, but we're also not who we are yet. And it's like we're living in this area where it's like, okay, it's time to pick which train car you want to be on. You know, I said this in one of my videos, but it's like for a while you can live straddling these train cars because they're going sort of in the same direction. But when we're being asked to pick between timelines or who we are now, same thing. But when we're being asked to pick about, okay, so you're not this version of you anymore, but you're also not this version. We're straddling these train cars. And now it's like, we got to start kind of acting like this new version of us, even when it's horribly uncomfortable. And I feel like for a lot of us, it's like we're having the physical symptoms of picking this new version of us, but we're also feeling you're just having like almost these emotions that are coming up, this purge. It's really kind of intense, quite honestly. So I think, like, to your point of what you looked up stick season, it's like, yeah, 100%. I think that's correct, that we're just going through this huge transition.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point because I have been feeling that very much within myself. I was feeling during retrograde season, it was very much like things were coming back up that I had kind of thought that I dealt with. And I was like, I thought I dealt with this. What's going on? But I feel like it was a checkpoint of like, which version of you are you picking here? Because do you want to deal with this thing? Or are you good now? You're going to move past it because you have to fully let go. And then now I'm very much in this energy of I feel a lot of clarity around what I want to do. And I also feel a lot of trust in the universe. I'm doing things that don't make rational sense to anyone around me. But I'm like, I don't know how to explain this to you. This just feels right to me. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And even though I still have this absolute crazy energy going on around me, I do feel very grounded in this future. And I think it's because I have, over the past weeks, made the decision to operate as this new version of myself. So even though there's a lot of chaos and stuff going on around me, I'm living kind of more in this version. Actually, yesterday, I say by coincidence, but again, I don't believe that things happen coincidentally. The universe set me up for like a full day of get in the fucking game. So I had scheduled this sauna goose thing that I go to on Tuesdays. And the theme was all about kind of being in the now and just enjoying like what's going on and whatever. And I had over these 3 different rounds, I had a very planned out journey from spirit of this beautiful visualization. And I hope that this resonates with other people out there. But what I basically saw in the first round was this visualization of me standing on a boat at a dock and holding on to these boat ropes, basically, like really tightly, and then just letting go of them and watching them slip out of my hands. And my boat started taking off, and it was completely dark. And I started to feel the boat rocking and I couldn't see anything. I was just facing the other direction now. And I felt very unsettled, but at the same time, I was realizing that even though it was uncomfortable for me and I couldn't see where I was going or what was going on around me, I had this innate trust in spirit that I was supported. And then I literally felt my energy look down towards my chest, and there was this bright glowing light. And I kind of had this realization. It was very much like a psychic journey going on for those who are listening. And I had this realization that I was not in the dark because I was supported by spirit, and I actually was following my own light. And as long as I follow that own light, I get there. And when I got to the shore and I embarked, the sun started coming up and there was no path. It was just jungle, but I just started clearing my way through. And it was this idea of I'm doing something that is brand new to myself, brand new to the people that I'm working with, and it's going to be hard work. I have to clear it out. But I'm meant to do that. And then my light, I mean, it's kind of hard to explain this part, but like, it was like I built this castle of mirrors or like reflective surfaces, and my light was shining onto them, which was making this really shining beacon. And people started landing in their boats on the shores, and I could see them, and their light was shining, and their light was being drawn. And we were just shining brighter and brighter as we built this community into the light. And I think that it's a very collective reading as well of we all are learning to trust in our light and to shine that light. And the more people that are doing that, we're just shining even brighter and brighter out into the world, the more we are together doing this. So it was very beautiful. So I still feel like shit, to give you the longest answer ever. I still feel like shit energetically. I'm exhausted. I feel like I am purging and shedding all of these old energetic layers. But inside of me, I feel extremely anchored and centered. I did a collective reading yesterday, and one of the things that came out in that was a lot about self-love. There was Aphrodite a lot in there, and also this in-between. We're all in the in-between. And to go back to your original point, I think it's a pivotal point. Are you going to choose to evolve into this new version or not? Because I have a feeling that it's now or never. You're going to have to wait for a while for this kind of amount of energy to coalesce, to bring forth these kind of changes. And if you don't choose to operate in this new energy that you're trying to move towards, you lost that opportunity for now. You're going to have to wait.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for those of you who are like, okay, how do I know what an opportunity is for me? Because here's the thing is this is what happened to me is I would listen to all of this stuff and I would be like, oh my God, that sounds incredible. How do I get there though?
Mm-hmm.
How do I move forward? And everybody would be like, well, you just follow your intuition. I'm like, where the fuck is my intuition? Like, what do you mean follow my intuition? These were things that I really needed. So when I discovered human design, it was like bingo, bingo, because that's where, so if you don't know your human design yet, your human design will tell you like how to move forward. So for Jess, you're a generator, right? So you're meant to be following your gut, even like against everything. So even when it doesn't make logical sense. So when we're talking about this and you feel yourself getting excited and you feel the when you're working, when you get jazzed up, when you find the right tagline, all of these things, it's like, oh, okay, that's your sacral, that's your gut, that's literally lighting that fire for you. And that's how you can really begin to lean into your intuition without understanding it. So I would say for those of you who are like, okay, this sounds amazing, Jess, but how do I get there? And how do I know that I'm going on the right path? Look up your human design. And then and it's an experiment. So don't expect to like understand it right away. But when you start paying attention to your body and the way that your body talks to you, then you can really begin to decondition. You can find the things that you're like, well, my gut said I want to create this program, but my brain is like, people aren't going to sign up for it. I have nothing to say. What am I going to say? It's like, okay. Well, awesome. Now you know where you can start working on things so you can start clearing that shit out so you can start moving with your intuition. Because what we don't understand is a lot of times your intuition is so quiet and your brain just, okay, but, and it's like, that's all that conditioning. So for those of you who have already been on your healing journey, fucking rock on, you're already on that path. Maybe knowing how your human design, how your body speaks to you will give you just that one extra nudge forward. For me, it was like, knowing how my bus gets driven, that was like the how to. So For anybody that needed a little how-to lesson, I strongly recommend human design as like an experiment, playing with it, figuring out how that works for you because it shifted the game for me and it's made my intuition now my intuition speaks to me in so many different ways and it's made it come through even louder and I can implement it in so many different ways without my brain coming in and being like, "Oh, you can't do that, Morgan, because you don't have enough to say or you don't have the knowledge to teach," or whatever bullshit I'm
Yeah.
telling myself truthfully. For the how to, if you're like, "I want to stoke myself. I want to do this." That's a really good way
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, and you can do that for free. There's free human design generators online, and then I'm sure you can reach out to Morgan and she can help you if you want to know because you're right that everybody's decision making, for example, is different depending on your human design. And I the reason I know so many of these different things like astrology, both Vedic and Hellenic, soul path numbers, numerology, human design. The reasons I learned about all these things is because I don't use them as if they are 100% guiding me and I have to choose one, but they all kind of resonate with me for different things. And I think of it like a headlamp. Like, would you rather stumble around in the dark or would you rather have a headlamp? And I know, thanks for talking about practical stuff because I know on these calls I tend to be very high level talking about things. These are the kind of things that, you as an intuitive coach, me as an intuitive coach, my program that I'm doing, these are the kind of things where we actually get into the practical of how do you do these things because connecting to your intuition is already hard to imagine for a lot of people. But then when you figure out that you have to do a lot of other stuff in order to kind of peel back the layers that are blocking your access to intuition, there's practical things you have to do. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people that I work with when I say, we're talking about something and I say, okay, and where do you feel that in your body when you feel it? And they're just like, because we are taught so early on to disassociate in that way and not feel things. So you have to know where everybody's intuition can sit in different parts of their body. I have so many different people I work with where their intuition is all over the place. And that's the other thing you said is intuition is quiet. So if you're worried, is it my intuition or my anxiety? Anxiety is loud. Anxiety is fear-based. Intuition is like a quiet whisper. And I watched a lot of Buffy growing up. I watched a lot of Ghost Whisper. Like, my view of how I work with spirit was very different from how it actually is. Like, you have to quiet. That's why people do meditation. I know people say like, oh, meditation doesn't work for me. I get it to a degree, and I will always try to find a way to work with somebody in a way that works for them. But meditation is, in my mind, kind of a staple to at least keep trying because you have to learn to be quiet and be still because it's only in those moments that you're going to get that really, if you want to get a stronger connection, you have to be in the moment. You just have to learn to be, and you have to learn to be quiet. And even if it's hard for your brain, like my brain never shuts off. I have ADHD on the hyper end of it. Like my brain is constantly chatting to me, but I learned to be like for like a little bit. And then once you I always imagine it like a rope or something. Once I get the connection and I grab onto it, that's my main thought. That's my main channel coming through. The other stuff is here, it's still there, but it's not occupying the forefront of my mind. But all of these things are practices that you have to work on, that you have to get to, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Walking meditation was something that really helped
Mm-hmm.
me when I was starting to learn how to meditate. But yeah, and the other thing I'll say too is like for me, it was very, very natural for me to receive gifts. And I had a hard time distinguishing or to receive messages. And I had a hard time distinguishing like, is it me? Is it not me? Is it me? Is it not me? And I would like really always question that. I learned some tricks to help me determine if it was me or not me. But the other thing that really kind of like just flipped the script for me was just taking the like, what does it matter?
Yeah,
Like
totally.
just
Who cares?
taking the pressure off of like, what does it matter if it was you or if it wasn't you? Like, who cares? You still got this message.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think at least from my perspective, when I was doing my healing journey, I never would have gone with my own self. If my guides told me to do it, I'd be like, cool, because then I know it's the right decision. But if I told me to do it, I'd be like, no, because you make too many mistakes, ma'am. I'm not following you. But what are some of the tricks that you learned to do to differentiate and to connect and everything? Because walking meditation is great. And it's also great in the way that, like, for most of us, we don't have the liberty to just sit and meditate for half an hour as our only means to connect to spirit. So it's actually a really good practice to learn how to just be out and do it if you want to. So totally recommend that. But I'm interested to hear what your tricks are that you learned for yourself.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I learned was like distinguishing thoughts, which thoughts are mine and which thoughts are not mine, because I learned that messages come to me through the back, like in a different area of my brain. So that was one trick that was like game changer for me because I'm like, oh, okay, that was my thought. And then like, oh, okay, that was something else because I always expected to, when you hear about like, oh, I heard this, I always expected to hear it through my physical ears. That's obviously not typically how it happens. Sometimes you might, but that's not typical. And so just distinguishing like, okay, where did that actually come in at my body? Like you said, where did you actually feel that in your body? The other thing was distinguishing energy that was mine versus somebody else. So very early, actually in my childhood, I've always been a really fearful person because I felt things all over me all the time. And I had no clue what it was ever. I was the kid that would like shut their light off, like feel the tingles rush up their body, run to my bed, hide underneath my covers because I was just terrified of all of these physical sensations that I was having that I knew weren't mine and I had no clue what to do with it. So as I got older, I kind of just shut it off. And then I had as an adult, like slept for like 6 months with my hallway light on because I was too scared to turn my light off. I felt like a hand on my shoulder while I was sleeping that like woke me up and I looked around and obviously nothing was there. So I had a lot of like physical sensation come back to me as an adult. And the thing that when I was very early, I was like smoke cleansing my house. And I obviously called my guides in and I felt a sensation at my back. And I was like trying to cleanse my back. It was my fucking guides just being like, we are here for you. And here I'm like trying to get them the fuck off me because I have this sensation that I don't know what is. So for me, learning, like spending some time and figuring out what sensations were what and drawing that like map really cleared things up for me because now it's like, okay, I know what my guides feel like. I actually know that my guides each have different energy and they feel different as well. No, yeah, just kind of like playing around with being like feeling a sensation, pausing and being like, okay, checking in. What is this? What does it feel like? Where am I feeling it? Just digging into all of those questions and truly getting curious. And I remember like going through this awakening journey and being like hearing the words get curious about a lot of things and like not even knowing how to apply that. Like I just remember being like, what do you mean? How do you get curious? And to your point, the answer to that is stop and get quiet. Stop and
Mhm.
get quiet. Like if you can take a 3-second pause and just try to evaluate what you just felt, where you felt it. Does it feel like anything you've experienced before? What are some correlations that you can draw? Did you hear anything while you felt it? Did you smell anything while you felt it? That kind of things. Like truly just getting curious really helps that. So that would, I would say, really like opened me up because
Yeah. I mean, I used
that
to
was
teach
scary.
a course on, I think I called it Foundations of Psychic Abilities or Fundamentals, or it was something like that. But it was a lot of those tips of like, we did practical exercises of these kind of things because to your point as well, a lot of times it's more than one sense at the same time because I always used to use this example with my students. I learned from a clairvoyant that my mentor was primarily clairvoyant. We all have all of the psychic senses. It's just how much have you developed them? Where's your affinity? But she mainly did clairvoyance. So everything that she taught me was based off clairvoyance, and she was a great teacher. But I just found that a lot of those things didn't work for me because that's not one of my main senses. My main senses are clairsentience, claircognizance, clairaudience. So what I was telling my students is there was one time I was doing a reading and I was focusing so hard on my third eye and on clairvoyance. And my mediumship guide was like, almost like she slapped me. And she was like, stop it, because you're focusing too much on one. You're completely missing everything else, you know? And I was telling them that it's usually more than just one sense working together, because if we use clairvoyancy, let's pretend that you're doing a reading for someone and you see a woman running away from a dog. Now, if you're only relying on your clairvoyance, you can interpret that probably based on your own life experiences, because you have to learn to turn off your ego when you do it, right? So let's say you're scared of dogs. You're going to go, oh, this woman was scared of dogs. I see her running away from a dog. But if you had listened to all your senses and you could feel the joy in your body, you would know that she was running away from the dog because they were playing some sort of game and she loved playing with this dog. You know, you have to keep yourself open in all these senses. You have to release your ego, which is something that's really hard to do when you do readings, but you have to learn to let go of your ego and just listen. And it takes being able to be in the moment and so still and so open. My guides, I can tell the difference between my, I call them my everyday musketeers, like my 3 guys that are my mains. I can feel the difference in their energy versus my mediumship guide. You know, that's how you differentiate, because it's not like Ghost Whisper. It's not like that, you know, it's much more subtle. So you have to, it's an art, honestly. Like, you have to practice. I haven't done psychic readings in a really long time because I've been focusing on other stuff. So I just do the intuitive, but I haven't been taking actual readings. But I just did one for my friend today because she wanted a reading, and I was curious to see, because I feel like the veil is extremely non-existent at the moment, how it would feel if it would be really different or really easy. And oh my God, it was like immediately I connected to her. I was just talking to her on the phone, texting her, and I was like, oh, hey, I'm feeling this thing in my body. Do you have something going on? And she's like, yeah. And then she tells me about it. And then I'm like, okay, let me just do a full reading then. And it was just like boom, 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 boom. It's crazy right now. The veil is, I don't even know if I would describe it as there. It's very filmy.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think, yeah. I wonder, like, why specifically right now it is so thin. And I think that it has to do with really just getting a lot of people to wake up. I used to really struggle when I would listen to things and people would be like, oh, you know, I'm feeling like the veil is really thin. And then I'd be like, well, I feel like nothing. And it's like, so, well, it's okay if you're feeling nothing. Are you experiencing more random things that you maybe haven't gotten curious about? So I think, like, don't get in your head if you're like, oh, I have no clue what these girls are talking about. It's like, cool, just start getting curious about what's going on in your life. And I promise you will probably experience or notice some, like, oh yeah, that is interesting. That is weird.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a good portion of people who are listening to this that are not psychic and are here for the somatic healing portion, and they're like gonna clock out of this episode. But you're really right, because I've noticed with people who don't even believe in psychic stuff, like my friends, they're saying the same things that I'm getting psychically. So you are a lot of times picking it up, but to your point, you just don't notice it.
Yeah.
You know, you were saying that you're seeing a lot of the same numbers, and I'm seeing a lot of the same numbers. There's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, I think that you're, like you said, like, okay, so what can happen is we're living our life in monotony, and we're just like in this daily grind where you're just like, I get up, I do this, I stumble to the coffee pot, I do this, I do this, I do that. And I feel like it just kind of takes one moment to like pull out and just experience and look at what's going on. So if you're like, this is all super, super fucking interesting and I want to know more, really cool. Try to find maybe 1 or 2 ways that you can break out of that daily monotony. And whether that be meditation, whether that be like just changing your routine, like maybe you just drink a glass of water before you stumble to your coffee pot and you drink 6 cups of coffee. Like maybe that's all it takes. When you can start interrupting that daily routine, that's when you can kind of start leaving a little bit more room for that magic to seep through.
I think I say it in the episode about spiritual awakenings, but God damn it. Now I just completely, but there's something touching my leg, but it's not a thing.
That veil is really thin.
Like, so I'm just like, I keep looking down because I'm like, at first I was like, is my cat in the room? And then I'm like, no, it's not. And I just was like, okay, whatever. But then I keep feeling it and I'm like, something's touching my leg. And I completely lost my train of thought.
This is a really good segue though to like thinking about how these people could maybe experience the veil being really thin and not even know it. So for example, like maybe you walk in a room and you get just like a slight smell of something that you've
Mm,
never smelled before. This would happen to me in the very beginning. Like I would walk in and like thought I smelled cigarette smoke and I'd be like, what the fuck? It was my grandma. Yeah, cool. But like things like
mm-hmm,
that, you might not fully. And like you, to your point, like maybe you're like rubbing your nose because you feel like somebody's touching your nose a lot, or like you feel like there's something on your nose. Like all of
mm-hmm.
these things could be symptoms of things that you're just not getting curious about and you're not really like opening up to. So it's like, yeah, the veil's really thin. And I think everybody is experiencing weird moments where they're like, wait, I felt like somebody was touching me or things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And it can happen so fast that you just like could forget about it as soon as you turn away and you get back to your life. But that can be symptoms of the veil being really thin right now.
Totally. I mean, if you've ever experienced deja vu, then you've experienced that. That's what deja vu is. I mean, there's lots of theories around why exactly we have deja vu, but that's what that is. It's like dimensions crossing. And I think my husband is such an amazing example of somebody who is so just intrinsically connected intuitively and has no idea and doesn't even try. Like he is constantly saying things, and maybe this is because we're super attuned and we have some sort of telepathic thing, but he is constantly saying things I'm literally just thinking of. We now do this thing where we go boop and we like touch each other in the third eye every time one of us does it because it happens all the time. Or he will just say the most incredibly intuitive spiritual thing, and he is not that kind of person, but I can just feel it in him how connected he is, but he just doesn't care. So he doesn't even think about it or care or know about it. And it's like, babe, you are so incredibly intuitive. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, I think that that is a strong point, is that it can be something that is so natural to people that makes them like not believe in it or not question it. Because it's like, really, it is something that's natural. And it just to kind of, I think it depends on how much conditioning you have that pushes you away to not believe what you're feeling. So, like for me, I had all of these sensations, but no physical proof that anything was in front of me. So I would have all of these experiences that made me really terrified and really made me scared, but no physical proof. And it was like I was always confirming to myself then that because I couldn't see it, it wasn't real. And I had parents and people around me that were also confirming that. But if you have kids that maybe were just maybe entertained a little bit more with their stories or things like that, I feel like the conditioning doesn't really run as deep with some of those people, and they get to kind of naturally lean into their intuition a little bit more without questioning it and without even recognizing that that's what's happening or that they're listening to it.
Yeah. So I had a chat with this guy, Mike, who's an angel healer. And I was telling him that when I was younger, I would play with my imaginary friends. And I've had enough kind of flashback memories to realize that I don't think they were imaginary friends. I think they were my guides. And I asked my mom about it, and she was like, oh, yeah, you used to get a little tray and you would put like iced teas on there or little juice boxes, and you would get those little hostess snowball cake things. And you would take them out to the little picnic table, little Fisher Price, Playmobil, whatever they're called, plastic picnic table. And you would sit out there for hours and you would just talk with these imaginary friends. Like I would just look out the window and you would just be out there talking. And she goes, I always just thought they were ghosts or something. And I was like, Mom, what a weird fucking thing to say. Like, you never were like, oh, I think my kid's talking with ghosts. I should talk to her about that or like look at it. You were just like, oh, that's a thing. And she was like, yeah, well, I also saw ghosts, so I didn't think it was weird. But anyway, I was talking to Mike and I told him that. And he was telling me that kids with complex PTSD a lot of times will create these, as he calls them, trauma demons, where they're like energy representations of that trauma. And they like fill a role normally to like help protect this kid. And ever since I talked to him about it, I now just imagine like my 4-year-old self bringing out iced tea and cakes to demons and just sitting there and being like, don't put your elbows on the table and make sure you sit nicely. And like, I mean, I'm still pretty sure they were my guides, but I just keep laughing. Like, what if I was just out there with some trauma demons that I had created from all this trauma energy and I'm just giving them hostess snowballs?
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. No, I definitely think it was your guides, but that's really fucking funny.
But I think you're right. Like, before we started going to church, my mom never really addressed any of the things that happened that were very obviously psychic, but she didn't shut them down either. It wasn't until we started going to church where I think she got a bit concerned that it was something more evil or people would think it was. But I have a friend who's indigenous Maori, and spirituality and channeling and spirits and things, and those are very much things that they grow up with in their culture. And so she just grew up around that, and it's very natural. And she was telling me like, stories about when she was younger and her grandma would be channeling, in the living room. And I sometimes kind of wonder I believe that everything happens in my life plan that I planned out for a reason. But sometimes I do wonder what would be different if I had been fostered with that ability, with instead of shutting down this obvious psychic connections that I had as a kid, they had been fostered more, like you were saying. Where would I be now? I mean, I don't regret anything. I'm very thankful for the experiences I've had because I love where I am now. But it is an interesting thing, and I try to make sure that my kids are not influenced in it, so they know very much about what I do and everything, but I don't sit there with them and kind of lead them into it. It's if they, my oldest is now starting to ask, like, when did you first start having stuff? And then I tell her honestly, and then I, ask why. She's like, oh, I'm just wondering. There's a part of me that wonders, is she starting to open up in a way? Because, for example, she had a mirror in her room and she asked me to remove the mirror because things were looking out when she was a bit younger. So I think she does have that. She also had an imaginary friend who she said was blue and came from a different dimension. And she played with her. And I always was just like, cool. Yep. Go ahead. My youngest also. So I very much think that they are open. And I wouldn't say I foster it in that I encourage them to connect, because I want it to be something that they come to. But if they come to me, I very much am open about it and supportive.
Yeah, I have experiences with my children as well that I don't really think that they see anything, but they definitely have like physical sensations. And like my oldest, she's only 5, but she asks me to call in her spirit guides every night before she goes to sleep. And she will I think she's pretty open, and I do think that she has quite a few experiences that scare her, because we kind of talk about her like being scared a little bit. And obviously that breaks my heart, but I just tried to kind of evoke her with as much power as she can understand at 5, and let her know that she has that power to not be scared. Because to your point, people think that there's like a lot of demonic things that you don't have the power to not deal with, and that you could just be a victim to these things. And I don't know about you, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that you don't, like, I believe that you have the power to not become a victim to things that you don't want to experience.
I agree with you that I think people don't understand the power they have in stuff. So, I've had students that wanted to connect to their psychic abilities, but their main concern is like, I need to make sure I'm really protected and I'm really worried about this. And I'm like, yeah, of course you want to do protection stuff, but that's more just to protect your energy. I think you create your reality in a lot of ways. I've never experienced anything super horrible trying to attach to me or draining me or any of these things, these entities that people talk about. Like, I've had curious things come in and like kind of see what they can do. And I'm just like, nope. And then they just go away. Like I was talking to Mike, the angel guy, about it, because he works a lot with what he calls, trauma demons and different types of demons. And I was asking him to explain that from his perspective and everything. And I was saying the only thing that I've ever experienced was one time I felt a very old, very heavy energy, and I tasted pennies in my mouth. And I was just like, I could tell that this was not something I wanted in my house. And so I was just like, no, thank you. And then I just said no. I went and got my sage and I saged just to be double sure. But I only did that as like a double sure thing, because I was very sure that as soon as I said no, it would go away. And it did. And that's why I joked about having tea with my demons out there, because to me, it's not, it's not a scary situation. I've had experiences with energies that have named themselves as some of the what some people might consider darker spirits, and I didn't feel that from them. So I kind of think there's this idea of you allow in what you allow in, you give power to what you give power to, just like you give energy to where it flows. So I'll use an example, and I don't want to malign anyone because I think everyone is completely entitled to their own experiences in general. But like for witchcraft, I've had people say like, I think someone put a hex on me. And then I'm like, well, why do you think that? And they're like, oh, all these bad things are happening. And I'm like, did they tell you they put a hex on you? Like, yeah, they said they were going to put a hex on me. I'm like, but that's why you're feeling that then, because you gave that power. So if someone says they're going to hex you and you're like, okay, and then you just don't give any power to it, it's the same thing. Like if I try to do a psychic reading for somebody and they don't want me to do the psychic reading, I'm not going to be able to get information from them. There's like an energy exchange that has to happen. If you don't allow something, if you don't give energy to it, it won't happen. So you're giving your power away. As long as you don't do that, nothing can really, harm you like that. So it is something that we talk about with my kids as well, like if you feel uncomfortable, just ignore it, tell it to go away, and that's it. And like sometimes I'll go, smudge their room or something if they're really feeling like, because they're young still. So if they're really feeling that. But we talk a lot about owning your power and knowing your energy. I think it's an important thing everybody should talk about, whether it's with your kids or with yourself.
Well, listen, I think that's exactly what I was going to say is like, this is important just for in dealing with human beings. Like, how much of your power do you want to give away with human beings? Because we create cords with the human beings and the things in our life. So if you're continually giving your power away to a relationship or a situation or whatever, it's literally like you're draining your energy into this thing. And all you really need to do is say, I'm not going to do that anymore. Call your energy back to you. Cut that cord through meditation or just through intention and say, like, you know what? This is mine and I'm not going to carry this anymore. And I just released a podcast episode about like how burdensome and how heavy that weight can feel when you're carrying other people's projections energy. It's all the same, but projections, expectations, whatever it is that you're carrying. And it literally just will keep you like covered up with blankets and just kind of snuff you out one layer at a time. But when you can, to your point, take your power back and just say like, no, I'm no longer going to carry this shit. It's kind of the same thing when we're talking about that psychic protection of like, I'm not going to deal with any spirit that makes me feel uncomfortable, scared, anything like that. I'm not going to deal with any human that makes me feel these things. And I'm just going to say, we're cutting that off and we're not going to carry it anymore. And I think that's just really powerful, whether we're talking about everyday 3D life or the 5D life.
When we're living in spiritual awakening times, when we're going through all this stuff, we have a tendency to attribute everything going on in our life to something in the spirit world. The reality is, a lot of the times, it's stuff in the 3D world because that's what we're here to experience. That's what we came to Earth to do. So if you also are talking about like, this person is really affecting me, and it's like, yes, but that's because you have an emotional, like psychological attachment. You haven't you see it a lot with women and relationships, right? Like they'll be like, oh, we have a cord that's attaching us still and I can't detach the cord. And it's like, that could be. It could also just be that you're having a really bad breakup and you miss him and you need to just handle it from a 3D perspective. Sometimes it's not as deep. It's not as spiritual, Sometimes you just got to move on. There's nothing holding you together. You see it sometimes with really bad breakups where people are like, oh, we have a soul tie. And I'm like, you could have a soul tie. You could also have just been in a really abusive relationship that psychologically effed you up. And now you're dealing with the aftermath of that. And that's why I work with somatic healing and intuitive coaching, because in my experience, a lot of times it's a combination that's going to get you through it and get you past it, because you have to handle the actual stuff that happened in the real life. And then a lot of times the spirit world can give us more context around it and help us think through it. But you have to deal with your shit in real life too. You can't fully be ungrounded living only in the spiritual side of things. But
I totally agree. And when we think about I think our nervous system is a
Hmm.
perfect representation of like what you're trying to say. It's like you could have all of this stuff happen in the 5D, like you said, for example, a soul tie, but really maybe you just got out of a really toxic relationship and your nervous system has to fucking figure its shit back out and you have to get control of that. So like to your point, the somatic and all of that stuff, it like you said, that combination is really, really powerful because I just hate to say like, oh, we have a soul tie because that makes it feel like you have no control
Yeah.
over how your life is going to play out or how that it's like I just want everyone to kind of have this knowledge of like you have a soul connection with every single person that comes into your life because you made this you designed this life before you came here. That's my belief. So it's like do you have a soul tie? Or maybe were they just here to get you to love yourself more? Were they here to teach you a lesson? And it's like that shit to me can be so annoying sometimes because like once again, it takes your power away. And I like that you're like, no. Listen, let's have our power back and then we can make decisions and moves from there. So I think that's really
I
powerful.
literally just talked about two of those things. So if you haven't listened to the Spiritual Awakening podcast, go listen to that because I literally talk about how, especially we as women, will find a sign in everything and think it's fate. And sometimes it's like, no, this is actually a lesson. Or like I use the name, like you see John all the time, John everywhere. And then you see John on a dating app and you're like, my soulmate. And it's like, no, John's just a super normal name for people. Like people are not that imaginative. Or John's a lesson because you need to grow past this type of person. Like it's not always as beautifully romantic. It can be, but it's not always. And then I did this collective reading. And one of the things that comes out in this reading is exactly what you're talking about, that somebody has made an impact of you somatically. They've planted a limiting belief on you that's still keeping you stuck. So sometimes that's how we use the universe when we're doing these intuitive things. It's like, this is what's going on with you, but you have to handle it in the 3D. So spirit can guide us of what is keeping us back or what we need to work on, but you have to do the work somatically. I can help you with energy work, but it's the same thing. Like if you go to an energy healer, in my opinion, and they tell you, I'm going to completely clear this out of your energy, it's me doing it. It's like, nope, that's not how it works. It's you doing the work. The energy healer is channeling the energy into you to help you do that, but you are the one who has to do the work. You always have to show up for yourself. If you're not going to show up for yourself, you're going to stay the same. Things are going to stay the same. Nobody can heal you. Nobody can do the work for you. My ethos and what I work a lot with is I will empower you. I will support you. I will cheer you on. I will guide you and tell you the things that you can use to do it. But you have to show up for yourself. It's not easy work. It's hard work, but it's really, really, really rewarding.
Yeah, you have to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Morgan, for being on with me today. I really, really appreciate it. Is there anything that you want to plug?
Thanks for inviting me on. I had so much fun sitting and gabbing with you as always. Stay tuned because I'm so excited. Go give me a follow on I'm Evolving because I'm really excited. I am coming up with, it hasn't fully come into me yet, but I'm still working on it. I'm coming up with these energetic activation kind of bundles for people to get you through your like unstuck. So those core things that can be keeping us back from taking the next step, from jumping forward, all of those things that you feel like maybe you're self-sabotaging or you feel like you might have like a worthiness thing that we need to sort through. I'm really coming up with some of the core things that are keeping people stuck and then creating activation, like energetic activations for them as well as a workbook so that, to your point, they can do the heavy lifting. So I'm really excited. That is what is kind of floating still up in the air for me. And I'm really excited to kind of pull it down. So I think that'll be coming in the next couple weeks.
That sounds amazing. Sounds really great. So yeah, everybody go follow Oops, I'm Evolving podcast. And I'll put it in the show notes along with your socials. Go follow her on socials as well. Thank you all for being here today. You can check out my socials also in the show notes. If you want to check out what I'm doing, if you want to check out the program I'm doing, the 4-week empowerment activation program that will help you stop playing small, start shining that light out beautifully and bright into the world, release those limiting beliefs. It's going to be amazing. It's also jess-solstice.com/join us, and you can sign up for information on the 24th of September, I think it is. I'm going to be doing a free masterclass where we'll be doing I'm calling it a main character energy activation, but it's basically going to be taking you through finding that spark inside of you and starting to help it glow a bit brighter. So it's kind of the first step before we step into everything in the program. So I'm really excited about it. I hope you check it out, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks, Morgan. Bye, everybody.